Good evening. It is Wednesday, February 22nd at 6 p.m., and we are at the District Service Center in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the land of the Mdewakanton Dakota people. Mdewakanton means dwellers of the Spirit Lake. Our first item on the agenda is our roll call. Dana?
Ryan Clark.
Here.
Sharon Van Leer.
Here.
Eric Tessmer.
Here.
Pat Driscoll.
Here.
Melinda Doles.
Here.
Simi Petnayak.
Here.
Rachel Foshkin.
Here.
Phoebe Noha.
Here.
Katie Schwartz.
Here. Okay, 2.0 is Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 3.0 is the approval of our agenda. Can I get a motion for an amended agenda adding 8.2, resolution declaring contractor default?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Melinda, seconded by Simi. Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, 4.0 is our district student ambassadors, and that will be presented by our superintendent, Julie Nielsen.
Thank you and good evening. We are excited to have two of our students here. One was unable to make it this evening, but we're glad to have two, and there's always such excitement on a board meeting night. We did have a virtual meeting today, but I will tell you that when we meet virtually with our students, it's just not quite as much fun, and they don't leave as many crumbs in the boardroom when we're all together. So this evening, we're going to start. I'm just going to have Phoebe introduce herself and share what school she goes to, and then she's going to talk a little bit about her leadership as a student at Woodbury Middle School.
Hi, I'm Phoebe Noha, and I'm an 8th grader at Woodbury Middle School. And my favorite thing about being a district ambassador in this leadership program is getting my voice to be heard through my district and through my school.
You keep going.
Okay. Something that's interesting that's happening at my school right now is our Read to Me program. We get to go to Woodbury Elementary School and we read to the kindergartners and we get to help them with vocab words. And it's just so exciting to see kindergartners start learning to read. Another thing that's happening is our math mentoring program after school. As of right now, we're just working with 6th graders, but we get to help them when they're struggling in math, help them with homework, help them retake tests, study for tests, and I really get to enjoy doing that. In our meeting too, we talked about our experience in school, and what motivates me to learn is when teachers make learning fun and just finding new ways to take notes, do activities, interact with each other. A joyful experience I've had in my building so far has been able to connect with my teachers. Just building a connection with teachers at the beginning of the year makes the year go so much better. And if I could create a classroom or a class, I would create a class full of life skills, teaching cooking, cleaning, all of that stuff, just hands-on work. I feel that's just something kids can learn nowadays, and that can help us in the future. Thank you.
Well, Phoebe, we have an opening, and that would be at my house. There's cooking, there's cleaning, and there's everything else, so you're hired. But maybe before we go to Rachel, just share with the group your favorite class and what you hope to do when you grow up, or what you're thinking about.
My favorite class this year has so far been AVID. I feel AVID just helped me learn so much. I started it in 7th grade, and I'm continuing to go through high school, hopefully. And I just love that class so much. My teacher is amazing. And when I grow up, I'm hoping to go to college and get a BFA in dance and fine arts. And I want to get a business major, hopefully. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, Rachel, we're going to start you off with going ahead and introducing yourself and talking about why you like being a student leader in South Washington County Schools.
Hello, my name is Rachel Foshkin, and I go to Crestview Elementary. And why I love being a school leader is because seeing how my actions rub off on people. So a good deed goes on forever, and just seeing that train go on and on and on makes me feel very happy and very accepted.
And Rachel, at Crestview, talk about something that is happening at your school, or maybe a couple of different things that are happening at this time of the year.
Something that's happening this time of the year is I Love to Read Month. So it's usually when all the fifth graders come to the second graders and we share books upon each other and just see how much the second graders are going farther and farther in their reading experience and their education.
And can you share, we talked about in meeting 2 and in the meeting today about just learning. What motivates you to learn in school?
What motivates me to learn in school is my parents because they really push me to get to the goal I really want to.
And Rachel, can you share with the group what that goal might be?
The goal is like getting to the top and staying there because when I grow up, I want to be a political politician. So my parents really pushed me and set the goal high for me.
And if you could create a class, Rachel, or a program for kids, what would that class be? Something you're really interested in, what would it be?
The class would be about taxes and how to like own homes because usually in school they don't teach you all about that. So when you get to the big world and out and open, you don't really know how to do anything. So just teaching about that would really help people get to like the highest point they're dreaming of.
And Rachel, I want you to know in the back row, we have our business manager and our executive director of finance and operations, and we sometimes say that they count beans all day, and I just want you to know that in the back, they were giving you a hand like tax class, yes. And before we go, Rachel, what is your favorite class in school? What subject do you like?
I like the subject math because there's a lot of different kind of types of it, like from numbers to letters to every agenda, there's math.
And I think board members, if you recall from our last student ambassadors, we did have our nutrition services group with our students, and they were doing some product sampling and sharing what they liked and didn't like and what had too much green in it or colors, all of those things. And Rachel said she liked the chicken ramen bowl. Rachel, do you remember why you liked the chicken ramen bowl?
Because there's a lot of variety of flavors in it, and I think that when you take it to schools, a lot of kids are gonna love it. Also because it's not too like junk food, but it's also really healthy.
So our kids do a great job of giving us advice even when it comes to food. So to Rachel and Phoebe, let's give them a round of applause for being here this evening. And now they can relax just a little bit because I told as one was talking, I said, look up at the screen, you'll see your. So they were kind of going back and forth, enjoying that just a little bit. So thank you.
Okay, moving on to 5.0, comments to the board. At this time, individuals may speak to the school board on any item relating to South Washington County Schools. The board will not respond to or discuss your comments. Character abuse or specific complaints identifying staff, students, or task force members will not be permitted. The superintendent may be asked to prepare a response to your concerns. Each speaker is permitted to speak for up to 3 minutes in total. The school board will allow up to 3 speakers per topic. At 3 minutes, the microphone will be turned off and we will move on to the next speaker or next agenda item. Our first person signed up tonight is Justin Fox. All consent items are considered routine and non-controversial by the school board and will be approved by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items. Prior to this meeting, board members have had the opportunity to review each of these items and may request that any item be moved to an action item for individual consideration. That has not happened this evening, so can I get a motion to approve?
Second.
Moved by Sharon, seconded by Simi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we'll move on to 7.0, informational items, and our 7.1 is transportation update. That will be presented by Dan Pyan, Executive Director of Finance and Operations.
Good evening, Chair Schwartz, members of the school board, student members, Superintendent Nielsen. Our first information item tonight is an update on our transportation system. As you know, we're responsible to transport about 14,000 students per day. We transport all elementary students that live more than a mile away, all middle school students that live more than 1.5 miles away, and all high school students that live more than 2 miles away. It's been a long battle staffing-wise for various reasons. We will update those in the update of some of the things we've been doing to increase our staff, but we have about 90 daily drivers. We have about 6 substitute drivers. We have about 90 routes. And generally, there's about 8 to 10 drivers that are gone per day for various reasons. So we end up having a shortage of available bus drivers. So we're trying to produce a sustainable system that will allow us not to cancel routes. Last month, we had to cancel routes to 5 schools. It affected about 675 students. Last year, we went for quite an extended time, and we had to cancel 2 routes to 2 different schools, and that affected about 600 students. With that, we put together a task force to come up with a way to make our system sustainable. Carrie Olson, our director, will present you with the work of the task force and some of the options we're looking at. Along with Carrie Olson, our director of transportation, is Andy Smith, one of our assistant directors of transportation. With that, I will turn it over to Carrie.
Good evening, Superintendent Nielsen, Chairperson Schwartz, members of the board. Thank you very much. I'd like to say, first of all, to our steering committee that has helped us come to some of these conclusions over the past year or so here. So most of the time, I love my job. I love what I do. My heart is usually filled with joy, and nights like tonight are a little bit more difficult. The last couple of years have been very challenging for us as we have tried to make sure that routes have not been canceled and that kids are getting to school. But when we've got to make reductions, it's difficult for us as it impacts, families and students. So I just want to say that. As Dan referred to a couple of these items, I'm just going to go over them. So our recruitment efforts have generated additional applicants. We sent out 64,000 postcards, not to just our district, but surrounding areas, Stillwater, Hastings, Inver Grove Heights. Out of that, we got about 18 applicants that were generated. And we think that we'll have probably 5 to 6 people that will get all the way through the process out of that 64,000 that we mailed out. And I know that probably doesn't sound like many, but for us, that's quite a bit, actually. We also, as Dan mentioned right now, no permanent drivers are assigned to a 6 morning and 6 afternoon routes, so they don't have a driver. We're filling in with daily subs and or standbys. We also have long-term substitute drivers that are assigned to 4 morning and 3 afternoon routes right now, and that's for people that typically are out on a leave of absence and that will be returning at some point in time. As Dan also mentioned, we had 2 morning and 2 afternoon routes that were canceled just this last month for 3 days. Last year, we had quite a number of routes that were canceled for the entire school year, trying to avoid that again this year. And to create an efficient and sustainable transportation system, we need to reduce 10 morning and 10 afternoon routes for the next coming school year, 24-25. If we're unable to do that, we anticipate that we'll need to outsource or contract those routes. And the estimated cost for each contracted route, an AM or PM, is approximately $56,000 per year. I also want to emphasize, I can't say this enough, that route reductions do not mean that we are trying to reduce staff. As a matter of fact, we will continue to hire and strive to do that every day. So again, it is not a reduction in staff. We've done quite a number of things to recruit people. We now have where drivers, if they bid on a morning and an afternoon route, which is 20 hours a week, they're now eligible for medical benefits. And we have a staff referral bonus that went into effect on February 1st, so that if employees refer someone to us and they get through the hiring process, there's a bonus involved. And as Dan mentioned as well, we have wage increases. We're at $25 an hour now, and it goes to $27 per hour on July 1st. In addition, we've done South Washington County Schools job fairs. We've done some of the community expos. We did Woodbury at Eastridge, just usually that one I think is in April. We do newsletters. We've gotten quarterly print newsletters also that go out to families, and then the newsletters that go home to staff and families every week here. Also, we've got vehicle wraps. Andy can maybe comment on that a little bit more, but we've actually wrapped trucks and district vehicles in some of that advertising to hire bus drivers. Goals of Transportation Steering Committee. Our goals were to create an efficient and sustainable transportation system for the next 5 years to accommodate the future growth in our district. We wanted to reduce the number of bus routes needed, 10 morning and 10 afternoon. And I'd like to just pause for a moment and kind of define the difference. You may hear run and route tonight as we use those terms. They are different. A run is a sequence of bus stops for one individual school. A route is a sequence of runs put together. So think of it as maybe a Woodbury Middle School followed by an Eastridge High School, followed by a Middleton Elementary. So those are kind of the difference of those. And those are put together due to time, proximity, where students are located, if it's a district-wide program or not. So that's how we determine what our runs and routes are. We also were tasked, and the goal was to increase the accuracy of ridership, explore the radius method for measuring transportation area distances, and clearly define what a hazard is and review current hazardous areas. We considered many options. And there's a list as you can see. I'll go through them very briefly. We considered continuation of opting in for 24 and 25 with ongoing rider adjustments with the implementation of the ridership tracking bus pass, increase transportation zone mileage to 2.0 miles for all levels and implement radius method for measurement, continue with current mileage and existing hazards with also implementing the radius method for measurement. Also looked at continuing with current transportation area mileage, making some hazard adjustments, and implementing the radius method for measurement. We have ongoing work to balance our three-tier systems by reviewing school start times at all levels. Again, we'll be doing that. We do that now. We'll be doing that going forward. And then creating centrally located bus stops. We have also started to implement some of that last year and will continue to do that. We will also be continuing combined bus routes for St. Ambrose and Valley Crossing Elementary School. The first year we did that was this particular school year. We looked at changing start times for Red Rock Elementary School, moving it from Tier 1 to Tier 3. Changing the middle school transportation area mileage to 2.0 miles so that all secondary would have been 2.0, elementary would have remained at 1. We looked at removing hazardous classifications for Eastridge High north of Bailey Road. Removing also the Liberty Ridge Elementary School hazardous area, which is west of Settlers Ridge, and we are not bringing forth that recommendation. One reason is we need to work further with the city on crosswalk enhancements and traffic control in that area. Also looked at removing Park High School hazardous area, which is over Highway 61 on the west side as well. Again, there's going to be construction coming along 80th Street. We don't know what that looks like yet, so again, we're not recommending anything with looking at that area at this particular time. And then finally, discontinuing Pine Harbor Christian Academy transportation. So we'll be talking about a few of those options in just a few minutes.
Carrie, a little bit before you go on, just to give the board, I know that we've shared some numbers before, but as we look at some of those options and the impact on our students, I know that we had a different graphic sheet that we used. Would you just mind sharing, when you look at some of those different options of changing mileage, looking at radius, the impact of students in the district?
And that's one reason, too, that the options that we did finalize, that we are recommending to you, we felt that it was the least impactful on the number of kids that it could affect. But some of the things that we looked at, for example, Continuing with the current mileage and existing hazards and implementing a radius method would have affected 800 kids district-wide. If we would have continued with current mileage, making some hazardous adjustments, implementing the radius method for measurement, it affected 1,100 kids district-wide. Increasing the mileage to 2.0 for all levels, keeping the existing hazards, and implementing the radius method for measurement would have affected 1,800 kids district-wide. So quite a few compared with what we think we're going to affect now. Okay, thank you. So the steering committee recommendations for 24-25 school year will require the opt-in, which we have in place right now. That significantly helped us in reducing 10 routes for this current school year. We hope to maintain and possibly increase the responses for 24-25 as families are now familiar with that process. The opt-in campaign for this next school year will begin after spring break. Secondly, we're going to implement a hazardous area change for Eastridge High School. So we would remove the hazardous area that is north of Bailey Road right now. And that's because we have a controlled intersection at Pioneer Drive and Bailey that's got the stoplights there, four-way stoplight, as we have also the pedestrian tunnel near Radio Drive and Bailey Road that families can use, students can use. We also recommend start time change for Red Rock Elementary School to balance our 3 tiers. Create station stops for Nuevas Fronteras Woodbury Middle School runs, not the elementary runs, so I want to clarify that. That will create more distance between stops and should reduce the overall runs that we need. And then discontinue bus transportation for Pine Harbor Christian Academy students. A combination of implementing these recommendations will result in a reduction of 8 to 10 routes for the 24-25 school year.
So I'll just elaborate a little bit more on some of these. So opting in, we can enhance the opt-in process with student tracking. So student tracking, what that is where each student that opts in will receive a RFID bus pass that they would swipe on and off the bus. So that helps us know who's actually riding the bus and who's not. Right now, the only method that we have to collect that information is asking our drivers to take a roll attendance as students board or disembark the bus. So combining student ridership with tracking, or student ridership tracking with opt-in will ensure all routes are as efficient as possible. Opting in for high schools, this current school year, which is in a second tier, we currently run 3 tiers of bus runs. High schools are generally second tier. With opt-in, this year we're at about 60% ridership. We really need to get that to about 80% to make sure that our buses are at the adequate capacity. So for a high school run, for instance, that's about 56 students on a bus. So consolidation of bus stops will help further reduce some of these second tier runs, so we can consolidate that with actually knowing who's riding on the buses. So in total, estimate about 8 to 12 bus runs reduced for second tier, utilizing this means here. The transportation opt-in timeline for the school year, or for next school year, the campaign will start March 13th and conclude on March 29th. So that's the window that families can register for busing, opt-in. So as Carrie mentioned, the hazardous change for Eastridge High School. There's been a lot of changes in this area, as you all are aware. But enhancements in the roadways and availability of the pedestrian tunnels allow us to have these students that live in this area walk to school in a safe manner. So the area that we're talking about is north of Bailey Road, so there's access across Pioneer at a traffic light crosswalk intersection, or at Radio Drive in Bailey utilizing the pedestrian tunnels. With this change, it would be about 120 students, which would be a reduction in an additional 1 to 2 bus runs for that second tier slot. This also aligns with what we're doing throughout the other schools in the district. Again, we looked at Park High School, but we want to make sure that there's no other hiccups or interference that would interrupt that student's paths to school. So. And then elementary bell time change. So again, with the tiered routing system that we have, Our third-tier bus routes, or third-tier bus runs are light. So that means we have 15 routes that have no third-tier schools assigned to them. That sounds kind of messy, right? So how do we get there? Honestly, the opt-in helped tremendously this school year by consolidating those bus runs, and then also combining Valley Crossing with St. Ambrose, so those students ride together to and from school. So second-tier runs have flexibility for ridership efficiencies I just mentioned. High school runs have very low ridership. Percentage can be increased on that, and so we can consolidate some of those runs. And then the first-tier runs are very heavy for ridership. They're really currently close to that 80% and challenging to further reduce those. So that's where we go into elementary bell time change, looking at what first-tier elementary schools we can shift to that third tier to help create a balanced tiered busing system. So first-tier elementaries that we have are Crestview Elementary. They have 2 bus runs. Newport Elementary has 4 bus runs. Red Rock Elementary has 8 bus runs. And Royal Oak Elementary has 3 bus runs. So we pair those. If we move some of those schools, we can pair that with the second-tier efficiency changes that I mentioned and reduce those routes altogether. So the end result of this would be having majority of all of our bus routes be completely 3 tiers, so utilizing our staff and equipment to the fullest.
So with that, it is the Red Rock Bell time change that we're recommending. And the reason is, number one, they have the highest population of students on the buses. It's 8 runs. If we would have chosen from the other schools, we would have had to affect potentially 3 or all 4 of those elementaries in order to reduce 8 runs with Crestview, Royal Oaks, and Newport. Families and staff have been notified at Red Rock that they'll be moving from the first tier to the third tier. Also, it has the highest number of bus runs for that first tier elementaries, like I mentioned. It also eliminates the problematic A-B bus runs that we have in the afternoon. Right now at several schools, Red Rock being one of them that has a couple of these, one group of students have to stay at the school while one group is taken home, then the bus doubles back and gets that second set of students and brings them home before continuing on to their next school. So it will eliminate that. And then shifting the 8 Red Rock bus runs will ensure transportation tiers are more balanced and that the bus routes are as efficient as possible. Routing considerations for district-wide buses, some of the bus stop efficiencies. Spanish immersion runs, 8 of them for Woodbury Middle School, are light for ridership due to the timing constraint and geographical coverage of the entire district. It should be noted that there's 22 total Woodbury Middle School routes or runs, and 8 of those are solely dedicated to the immersion part of it. So we'll be establishing centralized group stops. It may reduce the time required for immersion runs and reduce the number of runs that we need in that first year. Obviously, the impact is that walks are longer and further from home to bus stop for students. The average bus roster has 40 students per bus. The ideal ridership is 52 for our middle school students per bus. And the final recommendation, Pine Harbor Christian Academy Transportation will be exploring the discontinuation of bus transportation for Pine Harbor Christian Academy students. We need to reduce school bus routes, which we've touched on. Pine Harbor Christian Academy, as most of you are aware, is located in the Hastings School District. SoWashCo Schools is in the process of evaluating, or will be, the relevant factors to determine if there's an appropriate non-public school within our district that maintains the same grades and departments. And I just want to say that as a first-tier school, this is not the first time that we've reviewed Pine Harbor Christian Academy. It's just similar to our other first-tier schools. A few years ago, I actually had told Pine Harbor administration that we were changing their bell time, and they in turn told me that I could not do that. They were located in the Hastings School District, and they are correct. We cannot change their bell time, or we would have done that then. Currently, again, as we've mentioned, they have 3 total routes. With a total of 43 riders in the morning, at least that have opted in, and 49 riders in the afternoon.
Yes, so I'll just highlight on that too. If you think about that, the amount of students that we have on 3 buses, that's really, we could get all of those on 1 bus, right? So ideally that'd be terrific. However, like in the graphic, you can see displayed there, they're spread out. There's one bus stop, northern part of the district in Woodbury, but they're spread out. So those bus runs are well over an hour. The students ride the bus physically on the bus for more or less an hour. And then there's some travel time turning around, getting back towards the majority of the school district is problematic. So with that, when we have long runs, it's difficult because if a student becomes ill, has diarrhea, anything like that, it's just really a long time before they get home. So.
And then finally, our next steps that we plan on taking. The opt-in campaign begins after spring break. We'll be communicating the change in hazardous area with East Ridge High School families who are impacted by the change. We anticipate doing that hopefully next week. Sorry, thank you. And then we'll be hosting a Zoom meeting also, I think it's scheduled for next week, with our Red Rock Elementary School families if they have any questions or concerns with the change. We will continue to review hazardous areas and determine if modifications to those areas are warranted. And when routing for 24-25, we'll consider further distances between bus stops. So again, those centrally located stops that I talked about. We will be making ongoing bus rider adjustments to create efficiencies. Staffing, we will continue enhance recruiting efforts with the staff referral bonus. We'll be doing more job fairs, et cetera. The increased wages we hope will help. And then finally, we'll be exploring and evaluating the relevant factors to determine if there's an appropriate non-public school within the district that maintains the same grades and departments as Pine Harbor Christian Academy, with the potential of asking the school board to approve a resolution in March. With that, are there any questions?
Yes, ma'am. A couple questions. Do you know what the total driver deficit number is? As far as what number of drivers are we trying to get to, or what's the goal to be fully staffed? And where are we at?
If we could hire 10 to 15 drivers, we'd be close to fully staffed.
Okay, and when was the last time we were there?
Wow. Probably 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
So the 5 or 6 applicants that you have this year that you think look promising, are those going to be going to cut that deficit, or are those most likely going to be replacing retirees or people that are leaving?
That's what we don't know.
Okay, so we're not sure on that yet.
Correct. We're hoping that's the problem, that ebb and flows so much as to people, you know. We will be doing a survey though, again, probably at the end of March, how many people are coming back for the fall. So we'll have a good idea.
Do you have an idea on the trend? Is it getting better or worse, or?
Andy?
I think it's getting better, and I think it's across the board. It's not just us.
Yep.
As a whole, more school bus drivers are coming in to all school districts and fleets.
The thing that we're still up against is we're competing not only, again, with other school districts for bus transportation, it's the Amazons, the Ubers, the Lyfts, all FedEx, UPS. That's still the difficult piece.
Sure. I do have a question about the Pine Harbor issue. So the understanding is, or I guess it's been revealed, that the schools in the Hastings School District, I'm curious or interested as to know why busing's been provided up to this point. Was that a mystery or something, or I'm just curious?
I can only give you as far back as I can remember. At one time, Pine Harbor Christian Academy had a Cottage Grove address. It wasn't Hastings, Minnesota. And I don't know if way back then, if that's how it got to be the case that we started to transport them. I honestly don't know. One of the residents today had sent us a copy or some photographs of actually like a ribbon cutting ceremony or something that had the city of Cottage Grove there. So he too was under the impression it made sense that it would be a Cottage Grove location. I don't know what it was. So I think a lot of people were under the assumption for many, many years that it in fact was in Cottage Grove within our district. It is not.
So I guess I think we need to do our due diligence on this and make certain of this, whether it means getting a surveyor out there to determine what the line is, or whatever, or if we don't know, or if we do know, great, then we know.
We know.
We know.
We know.
Okay. And how long have we known?
Probably a couple of years that I've known. I don't know. I can't speak for anybody else.
Okay, appreciate that.
Well, I have a couple questions. So if we do end up deciding that we're not going to provide transportation for Pine Harbor, would Hastings School District then be required to pick that up?
That is up to Hastings School District.
Okay. And,
Yeah, they're not, right, they're not required because they're not residents in their district.
and then you spoke about a certain amount of bus drivers that tend to be absent per day. Currently, what is the protocol then with those, how do we staff those buses with those absent bus drivers?
So we have standby drivers that we fill those routes with, as well as substitute drivers. And then sometimes it's office staff and mechanics going out to drive.
What's the difference between a standby driver and a substitute driver?
So a standby driver has regularly scheduled hours. They will work, for example, from 6:15 to 9:15 or 9:30 a.m., Monday through Friday. So it's an actual regular 30-hour, 31-hour per week position. Substitute drivers will just be a daily sub.
Oh, like a substitute teacher?
Correct.
Okay. And so you had mentioned that there were a bunch of routes last year that got canceled. And can you remind me again what that was?
Boy, we had Red Rock that was canceled, Pine Harbor was canceled for the year, Nuevas Fronteras, there were several of those runs. Pine Harbor. Yeah, we had a Pine Harbor run last year. Yep, that was. Red Rock, I don't remember who else.
Yeah, it fluctuated.
Yeah.
There were some that maintained the majority of the school year. There's some that we were able to get back online through some of this consolidation that we did with the opt-in. We were able to do that mid-year and kind of tweak stuff around over winter break, spring break, stuff like that, and just get some kids back on
And
the bus.
Simi, we would have all of that information because part of our pattern and routine was that on Wednesdays, we would get notification if we didn't have drivers for the following week so that we could notify our families on Wednesday before the Monday where transportation would stop. Already this year, though, our cold day, I know I got an email from Carrie and saying, we don't have enough drivers. We're not going to have drivers for X routes the next day. And basically, I said to Carrie, everyone in the office and mechanics have to drive because we cannot give our families less than a one-day notice. And so we did then fill in for one day, and then the next day it was canceled, this year already.
And so what determines what routes get canceled? Is it just like those specific drivers who've been on those routes get canceled, or like if they're out of the office, then they're the ones who those?
No,
Okay.
we try to be diligent in looking at that. Try to stay away from the elementary runs. If a route has 3 elementaries on it, we will try our best to stay away from that, realizing daycare issues and things like that. High school runs, we'll typically try to look at that more so, figuring maybe those kids can get rides with other things. So that's really how we balance it, is to try to look at what runs are on those routes. They have to be open routes. They can't be from it's got to be an open route or someone that doesn't come to work for that particular day at call-in. We would not take it from a regular driver and say you need to drive this one instead.
Okay.
But that's how we look at things.
Okay. And so in terms of for every decision we make, right, there's going to be some sort of trade-off. So in terms of the trade-off, if we wanted to keep any of these things, either, keep like Red Rock where it is or keep Pine Harbor, what would be the impact on the rest of the system? Like what trade-offs would we have to make elsewhere in the system?
Well, Red Rock, if we don't reduce 10 routes next year, we will be contracting out routes. So that would be $56,000 for every route that we need to cancel or that a contractor would do for us for the year.
So that's 3 runs or whatever, two or three runs in the morning is $56,000.
Correct.
And so then to do that again in the afternoon is a
Another
separate $56,000.
$56,000, that's correct.
And I
Okay.
think we also have to know that even when we want to go contract, the contractors are saying we don't have the bus drivers either. And so there's that balance because we already have Hastings doing our special education routes.
Okay. So it's not
just
simple
a
to
given.
get contract runs.
No, the more notice they have, they will do their best to fill for us, but there is absolutely no guarantee of that right now.
Okay. And then, so you mentioned that you're moving to station stops for Woodbury Middle for the Nuevas Fronteras kids. And we're not going to look at that for elementary, or?
Yeah, I mean, we'd prefer to keep the walk distances within our standards for elementary students. Middle school, we feel comfortable that we can extend that a little bit, and it's not a great deal. I mean, currently we route within about a third mile of the student's home. We might extend that up to a half or 0.6 miles. It all kind of depends on each neighborhood, on how it's designed and how we feel the safety of the student getting to that stop.
Okay. And so, do we, like, what is the metric do we use, like, average ridership or ridership cost per pupil or anything like that in terms of, like, as we're making decisions on what we should or shouldn't be pursuing?
So right now, the average cost of a regular rider is approximately $481 for the year. And in comparison, for Pine Harbor Christian Academy, that cost is about $3,580 per student for the year. Just because of the number of kids that we're transporting, 50 kids over 3 bus routes versus 57 students on most of our buses throughout the day.
And so, okay, and so the obligation is that I'm a little confused on the law. So the obligation is that if we don't have a school within our boundaries that provides the type of education that parents are looking for, we have to provide transportation. So, okay, so I'm not Christian, right? And let's hypothetically say that there's a Hindu school in the Twin Cities, there is not. Would the district then have to get my children, if I wanted to send my children to a Hindu school, like the transportation would have to help me facilitate that?
So what it is if there's not an appropriate, and that's the debate right now, an appropriate non-public school within the district, i.e. proper religious or other affiliation, grade levels, departments, or programming, then the public school district is responsible for transporting the non-public students to the appropriate school district boundary. Okay, so I can give a couple of examples from the past. So St. Ambrose right now is K-8, all right? So when student hits 9th grade, they do one of two things. They usually come into our system, or they will go to Cretin, Hill Murray, another Catholic-affiliated high school outside of the district. We, at one point in time, actually were meeting Hill Murray buses at Woodbury Elementary. That was our safe border place to meet. So they would bring their buses, we would coordinate those transfer students. And then they got to the point that said they didn't want their buses coming that far anymore. They too couldn't do it. And so those families now get reimbursed for their transportation. So I don't know if that helps in understanding a little bit.
Okay.
And again, if St. Ambrose at some point in time would decide to expand to be 9-12, and we designate that still as an attended school, which we do, a boundaried school, then those families that choose to go outside of the district for K-12 Catholic affiliation would not get reimbursement, or we would not have to take them or transfer them at the border.
Okay. I think that might be all the questions I had.
Can I ask a follow-up to that, if you're done?
Yeah, I am.
I'm still confused by this. Are we talking about differences in Christian denominations? Or does this go by religion? You know, like Simi said, Hindu versus Christian denominations? Or
I can't answer that question. The only thing I can tell you is that when I did check with Kelly Garvey, MD at the state, it was non-denominational and non-denominational. Those were the comparisons. We didn't get into religious affiliations, anything more than that.
Do we bus kids to Hill Murray right now?
No.
St. Paul Prep? Cretin?
No.
I have a question. So you had mentioned the possibility of moving Red Rock to Tier 3. Mm-hmm. Do we have an idea of how many routes that will save by itself?
It will save 8. Mm-hmm.
So we would achieve 80% of our goal with that one move? Is there options to maybe consolidate the Pine Harbor Christian Academy routes with Nuevas Terrace or other types of, consolidate them like we do with some of the other schools?
Right now, we've got Hope Christian and Nuevas that are combined. I don't know if we'd be able to accommodate the Pine Harbor.
Have we assessed that or looked into that?
Not seriously, no.
I think the issue there is the start time.
Right,
Right.
it's the tier that
one
they're
and
in,
tier
that's
three.
the
Yeah,
dilemma.
Nuevas is a tier 3
Doesn't help
school.
Have we reached out to the folks at Pine Harbor to see if they would be willing to change their tier time, their start time?
I did that a few years ago, and they were not interested, so I have not done that now, no.
I mean, perhaps that'd be prudent to look into that again, given the options that we're faced with. Maybe we should ask them.
I have one more question. So are other parochial schools in the district boundaries that we do transport to, are we having any of the issues with the buses not being as occupied as we have with Pine Harbor?
No, not to that degree. We have some New Life runs that are lighter in ridership that may have 20, 25 kids on it. Again, we're making concerted efforts. I think we could have gotten better feedback, better opt-in information from the families last year in New Life. We're really going to make a concerted push this year to get families to respond. A little harder with the non-publics.
So like MSA and New Life and all them, they all have to affirmatively opt in, just like our South Washington
Correct.
County students do. Okay.
Do we bus to any other outside our district?
Not for general ed.
So this is the only one that we're currently busing to that is not within our
Correct.
district? And when we cancel, because this would give 6 months' notice that we're canceling. When we cancel a route for our district families, how much notice? I know Julie mentioned the one day, but how much do we try to give?
We would try to give as much as possible. I'm going to say 3 days, 72 hours, hopefully a week if we know way ahead of time. Last year, I don't recall. It was, I mean, sometimes it was just 3, 4 days in advance, if that.
And I'm assuming this would also cause hardship on those
Absolutely.
families because they are in similar situations to all the emails we're receiving. Those families are not outside of that. And how many, when we cancel one route for district, how many kids are we affecting versus this? What is the
It would
difference?
depend. Last year, I'm trying to think of what the numbers were. I don't,
Yeah, it's tough to say that because we do a lot of things inside of our routes and runs. We can shuffle stuff around and maybe it'll run 10 minutes late that day that we're short. So it's hard to have a solid number on what that looks like, I think.
oh yeah, I don't, it was a couple hundred students last year, I know that, between all the routes. And just last month, I think it was like 150 kids total, 100 kids total that were affected when we canceled for those 3 days, the Wednesday through Friday.
And when we canceled for those, almost the entire year for 3 buses, it was multiple, and we only had about 3-4 days notice on those too, correct? And that was a full year.
Correct.
that
And
we
then
canceled.
every week, I think it was on Friday, we notified families again, sorry, the cancellation is still in place. So we just kept them updated throughout the entire year on a weekly basis.
And if we don't cancel, or if we don't make these changes to reduce these 10-ish routes, we could potentially be in that same situation where these families are getting 3 days' notice versus 6 months' notice, that they won't have a bus.
That's correct, and I would anticipate that we would probably know before the start of the school year, though, already if we have to have cancellations. So, but you're right, going throughout the year, there could be, minimal notice.
Thank you.
I have one more question. So the opt-in for the 24-25 school year is going to be this March, right? So maybe we should wait a little bit on this until we know how many kids are going to actually opt in for bus service and then make a determination based off of that population, what the best routes are to best serve all the kids in the community. Just throwing that out there.
Carrie, can you tell me, so we have roughly 19,000 students. How many of those students are eligible for transportation? And then of the number of students who are eligible for transportation, what percentage of students have opted in? And I don't know if you know those numbers.
So we've got probably that we bus about 14,000 total students. 13,000, probably 13,500 are general ed students. The others are special ed students. And I wouldn't know the percentage.
Okay.
I think the ballpark was about 9,000 was the ones that opted in.
Okay, so 14,000 are eligible for transportation, 2/3 of them opt in roughly. Okay.
And if you choose to opt out and then your situation changes, you can opt in.
Absolutely.
So even if
Correct.
we think we're okay in March, April, things could change prior to
Right.
September. So that's why we're saying we need to cut at least 10 to be safe, regardless of what this opt-in is right now.
Correct, and the other thing, the option we've got is, let's just say fall rolls around and we have a plethora of drivers, we should be so lucky. We have the ability to bring back in special education routes. Right now, we're just doing 2 of them. Next fall, if we're in the situation, we won't be doing any with our internal drivers. But if we hire drivers, we have 20 buses on the lot that we can use for morning and afternoon that right now we're using at midday, but they're not used much morning and afternoon except 2 of them. So we've always got that ability to, for sure, give people work.
Okay.
I think as the board deliberates too, just to share, obviously we've had emails from parents and from school leaders. And we are not asking this evening for the portion of Pine Harbor to ask for any approval about discontinuing transportation. We would like to explore the possibilities and take a look at the relevant factors, including departments and grade levels. And I did already email the school principal to talk about a time that we could come down and have that conversation. So doing 2 to 3 weeks of research and gathering that information and then doing some follow-up and then coming back to the board at the end of March with that final recommendation. And so that will give us a little time also, Ryan, as you talked about the opt-in will be started, and that will give us a little time to take a look at how we're doing there. And so right now I can share that from our administrative recommendations, the items that you saw on the list, Red Rock families, Red Rock staff last night, they were actually communicated with in a meeting after school. Families were communicated with, Kids Club is communicated with. We have to communicate yet the hazards. For Eastridge, of course, the opt-in, and then just the slight adjustments with the routing for Woodbury Middle School students. And so we know that those right now are getting to us to about 8 in terms of saving drivers. So please know that we will provide more updates as we go throughout the next weeks, and we'll be back here after having a conversation with both New Life and Pine Harbor.
And Julie, if you could also, I think maybe we discussed this earlier, but if you could also get some clarification on the statute as far as out of district busing and what's required.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
One more question.
Go ahead.
How are our routes created? Do you do them, or do you have a service come and look at it and do it in computer?
We actually create them for our general education. Special education is, we work with SafeLine that actually does the routing for special ed.
Okay.
And so you had mentioned when we go to the RFID system that would allow us to consolidate students more. So can you walk me through what you're like how you envision that working? And I think you mentioned it at the workshop meeting, but what is time? I don't remember. And so I just want to make sure I understand completely like what your vision is as we use these cards and the impact that that'll have on the number of routes and runs that we have.
I can touch on that. So we're using the student ridership, the bus passes to enhance our opt-in process. So elementary, for the most part, we're there where we need to be. There's some wiggle room in there, but realistically it's there. The secondaries is where we're really hoping to gain some ground with it and making sure our routes are as efficient as possible. Second to that, the bus passes do provide a higher level of security for the students. The driver knows who's on the bus, who's not. Emergency situations, kindergartners, we know exactly where they're supposed to get off as well.
So it'll be a swipe on, swipe off. And again, if a student doesn't have their card or what have you, or it's a new student, drivers will have a tablet as well with their student name and picture. They literally will be able to check them on or off the bus as well. So there's that, but it'll definitely help us. It'll help us with efficiencies. Again, we'll know exactly how many kids are on that bus every single day, be able to combine if we need to as we go along throughout the school year, much like we do now, but we rely on drivers' occasional load counts instead of actually having a daily tracking that we this system will benefit us by. Also, no more lost children, we hope. At least we know where they got off and on, so.
With the consolidation, like how much time does it take you to consolidate routes? If you know that like, okay, this route and this route are both at 40%, and so we can combine them and get one bus of 80%. I realize that's not how it works, but.
It depends. I would say probably a good solid week. It depends on how many stops, how many kids are on both of those runs that we're combining or trying to shift around. Sometimes it's moving just a few stops from one route to another for whatever reason. I mean, some of those can be done in 24, 48 hours. Some, others a week.
Do we have a time of year where we try to keep changes to, or is it like if you're shifting a bus stop or shifting bus timing, or do we just send out an email and say, hey, starting next week, this is your new, okay.
It's literally ongoing.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carrie.
Okay, 7.2, read act information, and that will be presented by Kelly Jansen, Assistant Superintendent.
All right. Good evening, Board Chair Schwartz, Superintendent Nielsen, and our student representatives. I'm here tonight with our Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning, Mr. Arthur Williams, to present an update on our work to implement the READ Act legislation. As a reminder, Minnesota Reading to Ensure Academic Development Act, known as the READ Act, was passed last legislative season, and it replaces the Read Well by Third Grade statute language. When we think about why literacy, the goal of the READ Act is to have every child beginning in kindergarten read at grade level or reach their individualized reading goals. When we think about why this is so important, in short, literacy truly is the cornerstone of all that we do. It is the rock that all other opportunities in school are built. Regardless of what end of the political spectrum you fall on, the power that literacy has for children is exemplified in this quote. Literacy empowers and liberates people. Beyond its importance as part of the right to education, literacy improves lives by expanding capabilities, which in turn reduces poverty, increases participation in the labor market, and has positive effects on health and sustainable development. So tonight we are here to provide an update on two components of the READ Act, since we've had a little bit of work done since the last time we talked about it. Our training in structured literacy and identification process through universal screening. And to talk a little bit more about what structured literacy is, you hear a lot about science of reading, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Williams.
Good evening. When you, as Assistant Superintendent Jansen just mentioned, we are going to talk about the science of reading, and a term that you'll hear in the science of reading is structured literacy, and that's the application of knowledge from the science of reading. As you know, time was built into next year's school calendar to provide all staff an opportunity to participate in literacy professional development. So what is the science of reading? Science of reading is a deep body of research based in science that comes from many fields such as linguistics, cognitive science, education, psychology, and neuroscience. And it is about reading and issues related to reading and writing. It is not training on a specific resource or curriculum, but it is training on guiding principles that can inform policy and practice when it comes to teaching literacy. In 2000, the National Reading Panel identified 5 core concepts in reading instruction for student success, and as you can see on the screen, those are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Through this research, we know how students become readers during their first years of schooling and some of the obstacles they may face. And this research has also led to the development of methods that can reliably help our children who struggle to read. And here is a visual representation of the science of reading. And this is Scarborough's reading rope. And when you think about a rope, it takes 2 or more strands that must tightly combine together to form a durable material. And in this reading rope, you can see we have 8 strands. 5 strands in the language comprehension bundle represented by the LC, and then 3 strands in the word recognition bundle represented by the D. So over the years, as students are introduced to strong instruction and practice, students learn to read. This development is seen from left to right when you look at this visual. And the goal is to get the students to the skilled reading, which is represented by the RC on this rope. And that's when a student is fluent in execution and coordination of word recognition and text comprehension. The science of reading not only informs classroom teachers of the what behind literacy development, but it also shows the how for effective literacy instruction. And one of the things you'll hear is that instruction must be systematic and explicit. Those are 2 words that we've heard so much over the last 2 years. And systematic, that is having a very intentional scope and sequence, which includes reviews of knowledge already gained, and that explicit instruction is what students need to know and gives them both guided practice with feedback and independent practice with each of the skills.
All right, so to provide professional development for our staff on the science of reading, the Department of Education, or MDE, has selected 3 programs. One of them we automatically, I don't want to say disqualified, but it was too labor intensive or time intensive. It was around 160 hours, and we just didn't have that. We do have some teachers that have gone through letters training, it's called, but we knew that when we provided this time in our calendar that wasn't going to be enough time to accomplish letters. So one of the other trainings from Carry All, which is letters, is also the one that we are going to be doing for our early childhood and elementary staff. This course is designed to support educators in operationalizing the science of reading in their classrooms. It is 17 hours of synchronous training, so virtual group instruction, and 45 to 50 hours of online modules. When you think about this, it's modules that are structured like a college course. There's reading, there's videos, there's Blackboard, posting, and then at the end of that, they participate in a synchronous training. And then they move on to the next cohort once they've completed that. Educators identified by the Minnesota Department of Ed are required to achieve an 80% passing score. And we say educators identified because, as you know, we built time because we believe in the importance of literacy. We built time for all of our teachers to go through the training. MDE has specified certain groups. For example, this coming school year is K-3 teachers, K-12 intervention teachers, K-12 special ed teachers, and then the following year, another group of teachers is added to that. So while we are putting all of our teachers through it, and we're confident that all of them will be getting that 80% passing score, it'll be very important that we support our teachers, particularly those that are identified by the Department of Ed. And then for our grades 6 through 12, we selected a different training program. So this was also approved by the Department of Education through the Consortium on Reaching Excellence in Education, or CORE. And it is our online language and literacy academy. It's also designed to support educators in operationalizing the science of reading in their classrooms. It comes with course material. So this actually has a college course type textbook with a college course type workbook. And this is a lot of module training. So you can see that this is 45 to 54 hours of module training. And then they will have 3 synchronous sessions that are after modules 3, 5, and 7 that those teachers will be participating. And also, again, that 80% for those identified. And then while we knew that the other 2 courses are going to be great, they're going to really dive into the science of reading, we also know that some of our teachers, like our music, our counselors, we wanted to find a literacy program that was a little bit more applicable to what they could do. So how do I emphasize literacy in music? And so CORE offers this Adolescent Literacy Solutions, or ALS, which really talks about high-level Tier 1 vocabulary development for students. And so it talks about decoding and fluency, and it includes modules of comprehension, vocabulary in the content, fluency, and decoding. Unlike the other 2, This one is all synchronous. So this is all live training. So on all of our professional development days, teachers who are in here will be doing the modules for that. And that's 5 modules. Each module's 4 sessions, and so each module's 6 hours. And again, they will also be working from the same book that their 612 peers will be working from as well. So when we looked at our calendar, and I know we've talked about this before, but we have dedicated the days that we had for professional development, and then we were able to add those 5 additional days for that. And so you can see those in red in our calendar. And what a typical day will look like for our teachers is that time to complete the course. And then in the afternoons, they will be with a cohort of teachers. So they will be with like teachers from across the district with a teacher leader and an administrator assigned to their group. And they will go through that synchronous training together. And then they will also have some time for collaboration and application and how this is going to look in their classrooms. So the second piece we're going to touch base on, we've made some movement in our universal screening process. I'm going to turn it back over to Arthur.
Along with the required professional development, MDE and the READ Act also states that for students in grades K through 3, they have to be universally screened 2 times during the school year within the first and last 6 weeks of the school year. And they gave us, we're in the process of choosing between Fastbridge and Dibbles. Those were the 2 screeners that were approved by MDE. And then for students in grades 4 through 12 plus, those students who demonstrate characteristics of dyslexia and students in grades 4 to 12 who are identified as not reading at grade level have to be screened, but they do have the option to be opted out through family and teacher collaboration. And we are currently waiting for language from MDE of what that looks like for a student in grades 4 to 12 who are not at grade level. So grades K through 5, as I just stated, beginning next school year, will have to be screened 2 times a year. Right now, I'm in the process of leading a K-5 comprehensive elementary assessment comprehensive leadership team and a steering team. And with those committees, we're really looking at what assessment is and getting common understandings of assessments and what definitions are. And we're developing a complete picture of data and assessment for our students. How much assessment are our K-5 students experiencing? So we're taking a big look at that. And then we're also, as I mentioned before, in the process of selecting a screener. And then for grades 6 through 12 plus, we are waiting on guidance for what those approved screeners will be.
All right, so next steps, we are preparing for those professional development. We are starting to put staff into cohorts. We actually have an opportunity for staff leaders and some of our administrators to go through the training this spring or even through the summer so they could complete it prior to next year if they're a teacher leader and want to prepare for their cohort learning. And then Mr. Williams, Leslie mentioned, will be wrapping up that screening review. And in March, the new local literacy plan template and data collection process will be released. We just received an email actually about that. So Mr. Williams will be working with our literacy specialists and our 2 TOSA literacy teachers to make sure that we get that submitted. Our first submission is in July. And the READ Act webpage, I can't stress enough how they are continually updating this with information. We also did just build a READ Act webpage for our staff that included some of this information. So it has a lot on it. So I encourage, if you're really interested, to head out there. So what questions might you have?
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. Kelly, universal screening, so just so I have this correct, and I'm assuming this applies to not just grades 4 through 12, but it says that if they're displaying characteristics of dyslexia or not reading at grade level, there hasn't been any guidance from the state as far as what we're supposed to do with those students yet? Is my understanding correct on that?
Yes, it is. The guidance has been offered for K3, and that is the only requirement for next year, is that K3 is screened. They're still waiting to release everything for 4 up. We anticipate that the screeners that are approved will also be approved for 4 and 5. So we want to have a common screener for K5. But what grade level means yet, and the screeners for 4 through 12 plus has not been released yet.
Okay, and also what hasn't been released is what I guess, for lack of a better term, solution to those students' issues are going to be. That hasn't been laid out
It
either?
has.
Oh, it has?
Yes, there's actually other components of the READ Act that include curriculum and intervention. And so a requirement for students who we do screen, we do need to do something different for those students. So there are some requirements as far as intervention goes. And there's been some intervention curriculums released, and Mr. Williams is actually looking at that as part of the whole elementary process as well.
Okay. Is it possible for you to even begin to try to summarize a little bit about what that entails?
What intervention entails?
Yeah, correct.
It's going to vary based on what the student screener tells us, but some of that intervention will take place in the core classroom. So the teacher may pull small groups, the teacher may use a different resource within the core classroom. We do have intervention FTEs at our schools, all of our schools, and so there's an opportunity for, perhaps some students to be in a reading intervention class. We do have that in our middle schools and high schools as well. And I think we do have some one-to-one pull-out. We do have specialists that do go around and do pull students. We have reading core in some of our schools. So intervention will depend on what the screener tells us, but some will happen in the core and some may be some intense intervention. Unfortunately, in the secondary, it means that they lose one of their other classes. So, it's not ideal if a student really comes to school every day because they want to go to PE, and that's the class that we need to pull them out to make sure that they can read. We really want to make sure, we're trying to catch kids younger, and we're trying to catch them in the core so that we don't have to pull them out.
And with the screener piece, the screener will identify, like, hey, this student might need some more work in phonemic awareness, phonics, or one of those 5 pillars, and that's where then an intervention teacher or a classroom teacher will do a diagnostic to really dig down and find out what specifically it is that student needs support in, and then that goes to the intervention groups that Kelly talked about.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Do you get any of that information from map testing currently?
We do currently, yeah. We map test in grades 2 through 8 currently. When we pull that secondary group together, map testing is one thing that we're going to have a conversation about. And moving that, we just added through 8 this year. So middle school is really enjoying that extra data so that they can meet their students' needs as well.
Kelly, can you talk a little bit? You said that all the teachers, every teacher in the district is going to be going through some literacy training, right? What that looks like if you're, say you teach AP Calculus, right? And you teach AP Calculus 2 and you teach, you don't teach reading, you don't teach, pre-algebra, like you have like a really tight structure on what you, like how does the literacy training impact what those teachers will be doing in the classroom?
So we're hopefully going to reframe their thinking that they are literacy teachers would be the first thing, because literacy is everywhere, right? Being able to read the questions in math and I think especially when you get into those advanced classes, the development of vocabulary and understanding of root words, which is one of the reasons that the core program was really appealing for our secondary teachers versus the carry for our elementary teachers. That's really foundational, whereas core dives into that for our more adolescent literacy learners. So we're hoping everyone thinks that they are a teacher of literacy, and I do think that understanding, word roots and where they come from and all of that is definitely something that can help those teachers.
So when so each of the teachers whose job function has been identified by MDE, those teachers have to pass an assessment with 80% or more, right? Are all of our teachers going to be assessed, or are we just going to concentrate our assessments for those specific teachers?
Assessments embedded in the modules.
Oh, okay.
So all of our teachers will be taking it. There will be an accountability piece for teachers that are in those ones specified by MDE. The time frame on that, we're still waiting to kind of hear what they come out with this legislative session. So, but everyone will go through the same modules and the same assessments. And
okay.
I have a quick question. Hi, Kelly. Are there any goals or metrics that are tied to this? So on the back end of this, once the teachers go through the training and the assessments are done, how do we measure whether or not we're actually seeing improvement in student outcomes? Do we have anything in place related to that, or is that on the back end of this?
So that'll be something that's identified in that local literacy plan template that is coming out in March.
Okay.
I anticipate that MCA scores will be part of that. They have been part of the Read Well by third grade. Some of our kindergarten readiness testing, things like that for grades that aren't MCA testing. But we'll just wait and see, because to the point earlier, MAP testing is becoming more and more about growth in students, but yet this legislation really specifies reading at grade level. So we'll see what they say, but we'll come back when that is released.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see some metrics to say, you know, we have this many kids now, and we went through the process, and we're trying to get to this percentage of kids that are at grade level, and then we can
Absolutely.
measure how well these programs are actually improving the outcomes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Okay, now we will move on to 8.0, action items. 8.1 is proposed policy changes, and that will be presented by Superintendent Julie Nielsen.
Thank you. This evening, I am bringing forth the following 10 policies, which have been reviewed and revised to reflect updates in Minnesota statute, definition of terms, legal references, and cross-references. The Board Policy Committee took time to review the policies with district leaders, as well as on February 1st, the board had the opportunity to review those policies. This evening, I am recommending the approval of those 10 policies, 5 of which had no proposed changes, 1 that was a new policy around the READ Act, and 4 that had changes to definition, cross-references, grammar, or district language.
Can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Pat, second by
Linda.
Melinda. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 8.2, resolution declaring contractor default. This was added at the beginning of the meeting, and that will be presented by Dan Pine, Executive Director of Finance and Operations.
Good evening again. Chair Schwartz, members of the school board, student members, Superintendent Nielsen. The purpose of this action was precluded by the fact that in our school nutrition's capital plan, new coolers and freezers were installed at Eastridge High School and Valley Crossing Elementary School last year. The contractor of that project was Commercial Kitchens. The district has determined that the cooler freezer installation does not meet the project specification and requirements. The district staff and consultants have been working with Commercial Kitchens to correct the coolers and freezer. However, no resolution was achieved. The district put Commercial Kitchens performance, bond surety, Merchants National Bonding on notice of the problem. And under its agreement with Commercial Kitchens and Merchants National Bonding, Inc., we must declare Commercial Kitchen Services in default, terminate the contract, and notify Merchants National Bonding of the termination. I ask tonight if you would approve this resolution declaring contractor default and authorization pursuit of claim.
Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Eric and Simi. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing that this is a resolution, it will be a roll call vote. Dana, can we call the roll?
Ryan Clark,
Approved.
Sharon Van Leer,
Approved.
Eric Tessmer,
Yes.
Pat Driscoll,
Yes.
Melinda Doles,
Yes.
Simi Petniak,
Yes.
Katie Schwartz.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Now we'll move on to 9.0, and that is our superintendent report.
Thank you. I know we have some in the audience, so I can't help but call them out just a little bit, and those would be our bus drivers. And so we've spent a lot of time talking about transportation, but we got to spend Wednesday, I'm looking back at Tammy, I think it was Wednesday, we had so much fun down at transportation for over an hour, celebrating Bus Driver Appreciation Day, which was Wednesday. And just the excitement in the space, the number of drivers that came in and had coffee and enjoyed a roll, it was great to connect. But what I love hearing most, not just when I'm down in their lobby, I'm looking at Ron now, but all of the stories when I'm out in the system. I mean, I'll be at Walgreens and a bus driver will say, "You're never going to believe this kid's story." I mean, I have a lot of them. But I'm going to share one from someone who's in the audience, and that was this bus driver started Fist Bump Friday. And apparently it was just on a whim, like, it's Fist Bump Friday, kids, as you're getting out the bus. And so the next Friday, Bus driver forgot it's Fist Bump Friday, but I'll tell you what, those kids did not forget it was Fist Bump Friday. So my suggestion to the driver was perhaps every day you could have something that the kids would have to do, some kind of a handshake or something as they depart the bus. But we wanted to take this time with bus drivers here and to any of those viewing to say thank you. It has been a tough 4 years of adjusting schedules, and that goes for our mechanics, that goes for our office staff, that goes for our leadership in transportation. It's just been really tough, and they are working as hard as they can to provide that sustainable transportation. So thank you to the bus drivers who are here with us this evening. Also, a reminder to the board and those viewing that our Education Foundation, SoWashCo Cares, has their legacy event next Thursday at River Oaks Golf Course. The proceeds and the money that you pay goes right to our foundation, so it's for a great cause, giving back to our students and our community. Next, spring break. We will be on spring break. I can't believe it already, 3/4 through 3/8. Monday, there will be a teacher workshop day, so students will return then on March 12th. And I also just want to make a note, as Phoebe talked about AVID today. Our Park High School AVID program was revalidated today, so as a demonstration site. And Kelly, help me if I get this wrong, but Cottage Grove Middle School was validated for the first time as a national AVID demonstration site. And that requires a lot of visits in the classrooms, observations, talking about engagement with students. So congratulations to both Cottage Grove Middle School and Park High School. And then finally, just to note, for people who are here, the beautiful art that you see, we do not always have this wonderful art up, which we love, but our elementary art show will be held March 13th. And the students love to come and get their pictures taken by their different pictures of art. So, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, 10.0 is our future meeting date. March 14th will be a school board workshop meeting here at the District Service Center at 6 p.m. Then March 28th will be a school board business meeting here again at 6 p.m. With that, 11.0, and we are adjourned.